At 7:55 on the morning of July 22nd, 2026, in Northern Virginia, something happened on the largest power grid in the United States that almost never happens. In less than a second, more than 3 gigawatts of electricity demand simply vanished. 3 gigawatts is roughly 3% of everything the grid was serving at that moment. The load of a couple million homes, gone in an instant. And the strange part is what it caused. Not a blackout. From Washington, D.C., all the way to Chicago, people saw their lights flicker and heard their air conditioners and refrigerators make odd noises. This wasn't a storm or a failed power plant or a cyber attack. The grid did this to itself, or more precisely, the data centers connected to it did. To understand why that's so alarming, you have to understand what actually broke that morning and why losing demand can be just as dangerous as losing power. Here's what happened. Northern Virginia is home to the largest concentration of data centers on Earth, an area the industry literally calls Data Center Alley. That morning, a single transmission line in the region went out of service. On its own, that's routine. The grid loses lines all the time, and it's built to absorb it without anyone noticing. But the data centers on that part of the grid noticed. Modern data centers are packed with extraordinarily sensitive equipment, and they're wired with their own protection systems designed to do one thing above all else: protect the servers. When those systems sensed the disturbance from the line going down, they did exactly what they were built to do. They disconnected from the utility grid and switched the whole facility over to backup power. They did it almost instantly, and they did it together. According to the regional utility, Dominion Energy, a huge block of data center load unplugged itself from the grid in a fraction of a second. Grid operator PJM measured the result. More than 3 gigawatts of demand dropping off the system all at once, about 3% of everything it was serving. Now, why is that a problem? We're constantly told data centers are a threat to the grid because they use too much power. So how can them using less, suddenly drawing nothing at all, be the dangerous part? The answer is the single most important fact about how the grid works. At every instant, the amount of electricity being generated has to exactly match the amount being consumed. Not approximately, exactly. There's no giant battery in the middle holding a buffer. Supply and demand have to balance in real time, continuously, forever. The way the grid keeps score of that balance is frequency, the 60 Hz rhythm that all those spinning generators turn at in lockstep. When generation and demand are balanced, frequency holds at 60. When demand suddenly drops, generation is now producing far more power than anything is using. That surplus energy has nowhere to go but into the machines themselves. Every generator on the system speeds up and frequency spikes upward. It's the mirror image of the failure everyone plans for. For a century, grid engineers have designed around a big power plant suddenly tripping offline, losing generation and frequency dropping. The whole protection system is built for that. What it is not built around is the opposite, a giant block of demand vanishing in an instant and shoving frequency and voltage the other way. And this is why a local event in Virginia was felt 1,000 miles away in Chicago. The Eastern United States isn't a collection of separate grids. It's a single, synchronized machine. Every generator from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains spinning in perfect lockstep, tied together electrically. That synchronization is a huge strength most of the time. It lets the whole system share the load and lean on each other, so no one region has to carry a shock alone. But it also means a big enough disturbance in one place doesn't stay in one place. It propagates outward across the entire interconnection at nearly the speed of light. A grid monitoring company called Ting Labs, which runs a network of more than 1 million sensors inside homes, captured exactly that. A wave of voltage disturbances spreading out from Northern Virginia, across the eastern seaboard, and all the way to the Midwest. Those flickering lights and buzzing refrigerators people reported? That was the frequency and voltage excursion from that morning reaching all the way down to individual outlets. There's one more number from that morning that tells you how serious it was. 10 minutes. Grid operators correct small disturbances constantly, automatically, in a matter of milliseconds, faster than you could ever perceive. The system is designed to self-heal that fast. This event took about 10 minutes before the grid was fully stabilized. That gap, milliseconds versus 10 minutes, is the whole story. It means the imbalance was large enough that the grid's automatic, instantaneous controls couldn't simply swallow it. Operators had to actively step in and rebalance generation against the demand that had suddenly disappeared. To be clear, the grid held. PJM reported no lasting impact to reliability, and the utility said its operators stabilized the situation within minutes. This was not a blackout, but it was a warning shot, a real-world demonstration of a failure mode the grid was never designed to handle. And it was over before most people even knew it happened. And regulators know it. Earlier this year, NERC, the organization responsible for grid reliability across North America, issued a Level 3 alert, its most serious category, one it almost never uses. Part of what triggered it was a separate incident where roughly 1,800 megawatts of data center load dropped off the grid in a similar way. The July 22nd event wasn't a surprise. It was the exact scenario they'd been warning about, happening in the open. The core problem is structural. Data centers are a fundamentally new kind of load, enormous, concentrated, and twitchy. Because they're engineered to protect their own equipment first, they're designed to disconnect the moment they sense trouble. That instinct is perfectly rational for the data center and exactly wrong for the grid. A stabilizing load stays put and rides through a brief disturbance. These loads bail, and they keep getting bigger. A single data center campus being built today can demand as much power as a mid-sized city, which means the block of load that can vanish in a single instant is growing every year. Regulators are now studying whether these facilities should be required to ride through minor disturbances to stay connected, instead of instantly cutting themselves loose the way they did that morning. On July 22nd, the number was 3 gigawatts. The disturbance reached Chicago, and the grid recovered in 10 minutes with nothing permanently broken. By the standard of what could happen, that was a good outcome. But the data centers under construction right now are larger than the ones that unplugged themselves that morning. And as of today, there is still no firm rule on the books requiring them to stay connected when the grid so much as flinches. So the next time a line trips in Data Center Alley, the block of demand that walks off the system may not be 3 gigawatts. What the grid does when that number is bigger, and how much warning we'll get, is a question no one has answered yet.